This is a picture which I took on the Great Ocean Road in Australia of a magnificent cloud and a beautiful sky, some sea and some rocks. I thought it would be a good one to choose after the one we did last week because of the beautiful sky. Now, the picture is actually divided into 4 parts, if you look at it as a means of actually painting it. The first one is the sky to the horizon. The second one is the horizon to the top of the wave. The third one is this tumbled water in the foreground. And the fourth one is the foreground itself, the rocks out the front. And if you tackle the painting that way, you should be able to contain and control the watercolor that you're trying to do. One of the big things about it is this nice white cloud here, and you want to retain the paper as that white cloud if at all possible. So what I'm going to do is to wet the area that is going to be the sky. Then I'm going to blot out that white cloud, dry it up with a cloth before I start to do any painting. Just going to get my big brush, which I omitted to get out. You don't have to have a big brush like this, but it does help if what you want to do is to wet a surface. Now, I don't want it soaked, I want it wet. And because I've got such a nice big brush, I can do that fairly quickly. And I think my sky goes down about that far. It doesn't matter, actually, if I make the sky go further, because the sea is very dark, and I can put that back on the area quite easily. Now, the cloud that I want to take out is here. So I'll just dry off with the sort of painting with a rag here. Doesn't matter if I don't get it exactly right, but I want it somewhere there. And if I find I've been a bit too big with it, I can always make it smaller. What that will do will make the edges of that cloud not quite so fierce, not so clear cut, which is what happens if you try to paint around it. Now I'm going to use, if I can find it, put this upside down. There we are. I think that's the one I want. Yes, I'm going to use, oh dear me, Prussian blue. Thank you. I'm going to use Prussian blue first for that beautiful blue sky, largely because that will help me work in the colors for the sea, because that's a greeny blue, and there's a lot of green in these rocks here. So a greeny blue is going to be a useful thing to have. So here I have my Prussian blue. Now remember, you've got water on the paper, so you've got to remember about that as you're painting. I could, in fact, put a wash over the whole area if I wanted to. But what I'm going to do now is add a bit of red to that Prussian blue. Because what that does is give me a nice purpley shade. And I'm going to drop it in over here. Could be fairly quick with this because it's drying out already. Bring it in down here. You can see how it's spreading beautifully as I'm working. I don't want this to be so I'm diluting it with water. Comes along here somewhere. It's quite a big, heavy cloud down here. It's lighter underneath. Now, where you want to add a bit of variation, now is the time to do it while it's still wet. Remember, you've got a lot of water on your paper, so try to make sure that when you're making additions, you are taking into consideration the water that's already on the paper. So you can make your mix a little bit thicker. And of course, that helps. And while it's as wet as this, it's going to move while I'm painting everything else. So it's quite a tempestuous sky. Indeed, I haven't done it exactly as in the picture. Once you get started, you get carried with what you're doing, and you sort of get less involved in what's actually on the page. Especially when it's a view like this, nobody's going to know unless you tell them that it's not exactly the same. That's a bit strong there. So I think I'll just blot it out. Just that edge is a bit sharp. By blotting it out, I make it a little less sharp. So we've got something coming. Now that's going to move the whole time I'm doing anything else. I shouldn't have done that. Don't play with it. Anyhow, it's a fairly active sky, as you can see. It's quite good having it up there. I can see it without standing back. Marvelous. Right, now then, there's not a lot of point in putting the sea in while that edge is wet. I could dry it off, but I think this is me hurrying, and that's not a good sort. So let's discuss what we're going to do. That area there is really strongly marked green. So if I start with a Prussian blue, and make it quite a strong color. So I'm twisting the brush in the paint to make the bristles take in more. Right. Now I'm going to add some yellow to that. Depending on what yellow I use is the sort of green I'll get. I don't want it to go leaf green, it's a grey green. So I'm going to use, this is either yellow ochre or raw sienna. I'm not quite sure which. Can you see the mix? No, you can't. There's the mix. So I'm taking in some raw sienna. And my green is that colour. And I think that's pretty good for what I want. So I've got that color mixed. The other thing I can think about, I'm trying to learn from my mistakes last week where I dived in haywire. So I'm trying to leave that, dying to put it in, but you know. Now this area here is a sort of tumble of grey blue. grey blue, purpley blue. There's more of a purple in it, isn't there? So if I take the Prussian that I had and add a touch of red to it, touch more red, I get that colour. Now that, more dilute, gives me that. And remember, it dries much more quietly. So I think that's going to work very well. Are we dry yet? No, we're not. Yeah. Right, well, in that case, I'll leave the space for the sea, and I'm going to paint from below the crash of the wave there. If you look, this wave is quite interesting. You've got the wave in all its forms, really. You've got the wave gathering a past wave to begin to curl again. You've got the wave taking in its water and rising. You've got the wave just showing the white crest on the top. Here it's rolling down forward, crashing onto the sands. And here it's already crashed and is in that welter of foam and massive action that you get when a wave actually hits the shore. Sorry, I had it bent upwards. Try again. So here you have the wave collecting its water as it's rising, as it's approaching the shore. Here you have just the crest touching the top of the wave, but it hasn't actually broken. Here the wave is breaking and piling up on the shore, making that lovely crashing sound. When you get over here, it's actually broken in the past and is already that welter of water that you get from a broken wave. So all that I have to take into attention when I'm doing the sea. But I'm going to do this bit here in front first. Again, I can do it by wetting the surface, or I can do it by using this mix that I've got as just as brush strokes. And if you do that and you make them tumble and crash and come in areas that are full here, and it comes down here too, using a bit of dry brush to create. Now I can go back in there. And go back in with a bit of a darker mix and just touch it in places while it's wet. So I'm breaking up this surface also and putting in the dark color in places where the waffling about the way waves do. Try to keep the strokes fairly horizontal. There you are. Now what does it say? It's got the message there on it.
Yes, that's the chat I'm dealing with that.
Right.
I think we can do carry on.
Right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. Right. Good. We're back on service again. Right. Well, that's helped a bit because it's dried a bit. So I'm going in with it slightly damp and still putting in these darker areas. Some of them are rocks, some of them are the backs of waves, but they all help just to create a feeling of activity as we spread it around. Oh, I don't think that's too bad at all. Well done, Steve. Right, now then, I think I'm going to paint the sea, because that's the really interesting part. Or should I? No, I better do the land first. Just let it dry. You know, be patient. Right. So I'm going to start doing the rocks and the land here. They are quite a dark, greeny, greeny, browny. Oh, it's hard to say really. So if I take some of the green and pick up some Prussian blue, that's given me a green. If I want the same color to have a touch of brown, burnt umber, see what that does. That gives me a sort of brown. Okay, so I'm ready to roll. The important thing, like the sky really, the important thing is to get the shape right. See how it goes. Oh, sorry folks, it's lopsided again. I think if we play around with it too much, we're going to have more problems. So I've put in the brown and I've created a bit of a wash from it. I want to vary the color in the rocks. So I'm working on, how's the time? Working on the green in places, but I don't want it to be everywhere. I'm going to take some of that very dark burnt umber, because it is quite definitely dark in places there. I take that burnt umber and put it in here. I think that needs to be warmed up a bit, so I'm just going to put a touch of red in that. Just enough to warm it. I don't want to go as warm as burnt sienna. I think that wouldn't be useful. Now, this is just about dried, so I'm going to go over it with water. So I want to blur it out a bit if I can. If I go over it again in water, a bit of luck, the paint will start to work again. And we'll, for instance, there, the purple and the brown need to come together a bit. Here's the brown. Use the purple. Because it's not quite as definite as all that just there. Now let's look at some of these marks. There's a definite mark there. This area here is really dark, so I've added the Prussian to the mix there. Making some rather nice shapes there, so I'll leave them in. Right, I think there's just time to put the sea in. It's a pity because I didn't really want to rush the sea, but there we are. Now, first thing we want is a reasonably straight line. I think to do that, I want to keep my hand out of the wet paint if I can. So I'm going to reasonably straight. Well done, Steve. Now over here, it's a slightly different color, so I'm just adding a touch of the greeny color to the water here. Right, now then, you're going to look at the top of the wave. It comes down to about here. So right, okay. To add a little touch more of this yellowy green, and it comes down here to start the wave crashing. So all this here, I can use this color that I've got, add a bit more yellow to it. Right, now that's crashing down there. There's a couple of little crashes there. And then over here, the color of the water changes. And we get this welter of water coming down here, and it comes down this side and crashes into this lot here. I don't know if you're getting anything out of this at all, frankly. However, there we are. Now, I don't want that one. I'm going to alter the picture a bit. I don't really want that one to show quite so much, so I'm calming it down a bit. This is the one that's got all the action and color with it. We're going to have to wait for that to dry before I do any more. So I think I better wait. I think that's the end for today.